And the past, if you look at it objectively and broadly, gives very little reason in the first instance for any optimism about the future of freedom. If you look at the history of the world over long periods of time, it's perfectly clear that the natural state of mankind is tyranny and misery. That free societies have been very rare, there have been very few of them, they've been very exceptional. It's hard to find any place in the world where you have had a free society over any long period of time, and at no time have more than a minority of the people ever lived in a free society. That's as true today as it has ever been before. We have been extraordinarily fortunate in having been born or having been able to migrate to a relatively free society. As I shall point out, less free than it was, but certainly free by comparison with most of the countries of the world. And therefore we tend to underestimate the fragility of a free society and the difficulty of maintaining it. We think of it's not only that free societies have been rare, but they have been largely a result of accident rather than of any natural, predetermined forces. There is no natural force that leads to freedom. I have often thought that, using economic analogies, that it may well be that a free society is an unstable equilibrium position. A position which it can be, if achieved, can be maintained, but which, if slightly disturbed, will tend to move toward its opposite. I hope that's not right, and I think it need not be right, but it's not something that history lets us dismiss. But consider the question of how our own free society arose. In my opinion, the extent of freedom in our society owes an enormous amount to two accidents. The first accident is particularly appropriate to speak about today because tomorrow we celebrate the birthday of George Washington. He wasn't really born on February 16th, as you all know. That's a fake. That's a government fake. He was born on February 22nd, but because the Congress deemed that it was in the general welfare that it be celebrated on a Monday, we now celebrate it on whatever Monday falls nearest to that. Have you ever considered the fact that of the various revolutions that have taken place in the world, the United States Revolution, the American Revolution, is almost unique in having given birth to a free society? The Russian Revolution did not give birth to a free society. The French Revolution did not give birth to a free society. The Chinese Revolution did not, and you can go down. It's very hard to find any revolutions that did. Our own revolution almost went the way of all other revolutions. At the end of the Revolutionary War, when there was great dissatisfaction among the armed forces, and particularly the officer corps, because they hadn't been paid, a group formed a conspiracy. Among that group, I may say, was Alexander Hamilton, who was a very leading member of it. I have a great admiration for Alexander Hamilton as an intellect, and as having done a great deal to get the adoption of the U.S. Constitution. But I don't have much respect for his report on manufactures, which was an attempt to show that Adam Smith was wrong. At any rate, to go back to that story, because I think it's a fascinating story. This group of dissatisfied military officers wanted to set up a military junta to take over the country and run it so they could get their pay. And they wanted to have George Washington lead their junta. And it was only because of the personal character of George Washington, his resistance to the idea that he should become essentially a military dictator, but equally important, to the love which his troops bore for him and for his calling together a mass meeting and getting up and making a speech in which he urged them not to go that route. I may say there were other generals around